When we talk about agriculture in India, we're not just talking about an industry. We're talking about the very heartbeat of the nation, something that shapes the lives of hundreds of millions of people. But how does this ancient practice manage to feed a modern superpower? Well, let's dive into the massive and complex world of Indian agriculture. To really get a sense of the scale here, just think about this. A staggering 2/3 of India's entire population is involved in agriculture. That's not just some statistic, right? It's the fundamental reality that holds up the entire Indian economy and society. And hey, this isn't some far-off abstract idea. There's this really important connection, a triangle really, that links the nation, its farms, and every single one of us, whether we live in a packed city or a tiny village. So, why does it matter so much to every single one of us? Well, for starters, it's the biggest job creator out there. We're talking over half the population. Plus, it's literally what puts food on our plates every day. And on top of that, it provides the raw materials for so many other major industries, everything from cotton for our clothes to sugar for, well, everything. It's basically the engine that keeps the whole country running. But how is all this stuff actually grown? How does India farm? Broadly speaking, it all boils down to two main approaches to working the land. Okay, take a look at this. This flowchart lays it out pretty clearly. At the very top, you've got two main categories, subsistence farming and commercial farming. Pretty much every other kind of farming falls under one of those two. So what's the real difference between the two? Well, it all comes down to why you're farming. Subsistence farming is all about survival. You're growing just enough to feed your own family. Picture small plots, your whole family pitching in, using old-school traditional methods. Commercial farming, though, that's a whole different ballgame. It's a business, plain and simple. It's all about making a profit, using the latest tech, and doing it on a massive, massive scale. And these pictures, they really drive the point home, don't they? On the left, you see that hands-on, family-driven world of subsistence farming. Then on the right, you've got the huge machines, the precision of commercial agriculture. It's two completely different worlds, but they often exist side by side in the same country. Now, farming in India isn't random. It follows a very specific rhythm, a dance with nature, really. And it's all dictated by the monsoons. This rhythm breaks the year down into three main crop seasons. Okay, let's get into it. First up, you've got Rabi. That's the winter season, and it's when we get crops like wheat. Then comes Kharif, which is the big one, the monsoon season. This is absolutely crucial for staples like rice. And then there's a short little season squeezed in between called Zaid. It's perfect for things like watermelon and cucumbers during the summer. It's kind of hard to imagine now, but for a long time, India really struggled with severe food shortages. So how did it pull off this incredible turnaround, becoming a country with a food surplus? The answer is in a series of huge, game-changing reforms. So let's walk through how this all happened. Right after independence, the first major move was land reform, getting rid of the old zamindari system with its giant feudal landlords. Then came the 60s and 70s, and this is where things get really interesting. You have the Green Revolution, which was an absolute game changer, sending grain yields through the roof. And at the same time, the White Revolution did the exact same thing for milk production. The progress didn't stop there, though. In the 80s and 90s, we saw big land development programs, and more recently, things like the Kisan credit card and minimum support price to help farmers directly. And the results? Absolutely staggering. Just look at this chart. You can see the incredible spike in food grain production. This is the direct result of all those reforms. India had finally achieved self-sufficiency in food, which was a monumental, monumental achievement. But, and this is a big but, this incredible success story leads us to a really tough question. If India is producing more than enough food for everyone, why is hunger still such a big problem? And that question brings us to the really tricky puzzle of food security. Because it turns out that feeding a nation isn't as simple as just growing enough food. It's way more complicated than that. Okay, so what is food security? The official definition says it's when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. The key words to hang on to there are access and nutritious. Think of it like a table with 4 legs. The first leg is availability, just having enough food around, and India's pretty much nailed that one. But then you have the other 3 legs. Access, can people actually get to the food? Can they afford it?
Utilization. Is the food they're eating actually good for them? Is it nutritious? And stability. Can they count on having that food all the time? And it's on these last three legs that the table starts to get a little wobbly.
This whole imbalance leads to something called hidden hunger. It's a really interesting idea. It's when a person is eating enough calories to not feel hungry, but their diet is missing the essential vitamins and minerals they need to actually be healthy. So how does the government try to fix this access problem? Well, their biggest tool is something called the Public Distribution System, or PDS. The idea is actually pretty simple. The government buys grain from farmers at a set price and then sells it super cheap through a huge network of what they call fair price shops. On paper, it sounds like a fantastic solution, right? But in the real world, it's got some major challenges. You hear about leakages, which is when the grain gets siphoned off and sold on the open market. And just figuring out who the poorest of the poor are to make sure the help gets to the right people is an unbelievably difficult task. And as if that wasn't enough, looking ahead, Indian agriculture is facing a whole new set of pressures. Globalization means farmers are now competing with big, heavily subsidized farms from other countries. The actual land available for farming is shrinking as cities and industries expand. And on top of all that, there's a huge and growing push for more sustainable, organic farming to protect the land for the future. It's a lot to deal with. This quote here really just says it all, doesn't it? The country has enough food, it's self-sufficient, but a huge number of people are still trapped in food insecurity. It's the central paradox of this whole story. Just because you grow the food doesn't mean everyone gets to eat. So that leaves us with the big question, the one that will define the next chapter of this story. With a population that's still growing on a planet that's constantly changing, how can India possibly balance the need to produce even more food with the absolute necessity of making sure every single person gets a seat at the table? That's the challenge ahead.